Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live in the flesh.
Yeah, and you've brought the shambles with you. This has been a chaotic. See when it's just me here, everyone's under control.
Everyone's really smooth.
20 minutes have been stressed out my head.
We just still made it for 6 though.
Yeah,
Maybe 1 minute past. We're joined.
and I'm missing Jack Draper, centre court.
We're joined as ever by the third strand of the dream team, the one and only Scott McDermott. There he is. Look at that face.
How you doing, boys? You alright?
Luke says evening, Daniel and Keith. No evening for Scott. That's a wee bit rude. But there you go. How's it going, Scott?
Aye, not bad, mate. Not bad. Busy.
Aye.
It's getting busy, isn't it? There's a lot to discuss tonight. There's a lot going on. Obviously, Rangers transfer wise, Daniel, stuff going on. In fact, across the top flight. But I feel we've sort of been chastised a bit.
A little bit.
So, are we going to start with Celtic tonight?
To try and keep the masses.
See, the thing is, this is the problem. There's not oodles happening with Celtic, but there is actually. There's enough happening because Celtic have done more in the transfer market than the Rangers have done thus far.
Aye.
And Celtic really don't need to do all that much more than Rangers in the transfer market, if anything at all. So, but I'm sure we'll come round to all the other stuff that's going on later. We've had a Daily Record exclusive in terms of Rangers signing, and we can come to all that later because otherwise we might. Who's the guy that keeps telling us off for it?
The Bucky Trucker, who I bet isn't even watching the night. We start with Celtic and he's not even.
He's probably in a bad mood.
Aye, I know. But let's see how we go. The best place for us to start is Greg Taylor. It's been officially announced today that he's a PAOK player. He's off to Greece. Quite an intense announcement video. Did you see it?
No, I didn't.
It's painting his face black and white and all that, and
the old woad and all that.
by pointing at the badge and stuff. But
I did tell you it's an intense club.
You said that.
It's in a very intense environment.
You've been to like Nou Camp, San Siro, blah blah. But PAOK's the place that you say was the most intense atmosphere.
That place.
Aye.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That place puts the fear into you.
Aye.
Was that a Rangers game, Jacko?
Dick Advocaat. Dick Advocaat was the manager, Scott, and it was not only was it absolutely sweltering, but the PAOK fans were there about 3 hours before kick-off. They weren't inside the stadium, all of them, because a lot of them decided to stay out on the street. There's winding wee streets through houses to get to the stadium. They lined both sides of that street just to give everybody a nice welcome and make you feel that you were in a place that you really didn't want to be. And it's funny, I'd bought a ball for that after, because we had a pool with a rooftop.
A
hotel with a rooftop pool, and I decided we'll play heady tennis and all that in the pool. So I'd bought this ball, and we're on the coach and we're going up through and I'm just like, because I'm trying to stay cool, right? And I'm looking at guys doing the old slit and throat gestures and stuff. So I thought, right, try and stay cool here. So I'm bouncing the ball off the back of the seat in front of us and all that. Then I thought, could I just have made the mistake of letting them think that this is the team bus?
Oh no!
I was a lot younger then, I have to tell you. Wow, hostile. Oh my God!
What was the score that night? Just out of interest.
I couldn't tell you.
Nice.
I can't remember if it was a draw, but it was. I mean, it was phenomenal in terms of how they built the match up. They were out there on the pitch. You know, there was a sort of guy going round the stands, and he was getting the whole place to clap in unison, and you just felt. And this is, a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before kickoff. The place was electric.
Wow.
And you just thought, wow, yeah. So that'll be why I think they'll probably like the idea of having a Scottish guy, and they've gone with the woad and all this to try and present him as some sort of Braveheart warrior, which should go down well in that part of the world.
Well, we've got plenty of comments coming in on Taylor and many more. If you want to get involved in the conversation, file them into the comment section below. John says, Greg Taylor was a great servant to Celtic. Sad to see him go, but can understand not wanting to play second fiddle to Tierney. Best of luck at PAOK. Smell the Glove says, thanks Greg for the 11 winners' medals. Mark says, Taylor will show the naysayers how much you'll be missed. And on Facebook as well, if I can find it. Ed says, thank you for your dedicated and loyal service to Glasgow Celtic. I'm really sorry to see you leave, but you can most certainly leave with your head held high. we've talked about it before. It's worth mentioning maybe that he did get a bit of stick sometimes, Greg Taylor. Never understood
never a fan's favourite.
Never understood it. Really weird to me.
I think it might be part to do with the fact that, you know, in his younger days, he was coming up through the ranks at Rangers.
Well, just on that,
it might be as simple as that.
Rangers is UK says, wonder if Taylor will get his season ticket back now.
I think there's been a bit of online banter with Chris Boyd about that today, hasn't there? And Greg Taylor's made it clear where his heart now lies in the shape of green heart-shaped emojis. Listen, he was a terrific performer for Celtic over the years. He's well decorated from his time there. And I actually do think he'll be missed. I think Celtic, you know, they'll do well to replace him with a player of similar quality. And also the flexibility that I think he gave the team, particularly in the Champions League when he went back to the Ange Postecoglou inverted role.
Mm-hmm. He played that really well.
And gave Celtic that extra layer of protection in front of the centre of defence alongside Cal McGregor. I thought he was key. He was a key component to the way that Celtic recovered from the kind of bruising defeat against Borussia Dortmund. I think that the way that Greg Taylor played that position was really important in the way that Celtic recovered from that. I did think, and I said it, and I've obviously put the curse on it, that Brendan Rodgers, I thought he was working his magic on him. I thought he might be able to convince him that it was better to stay than to go, that he'd get enough football at Celtic, even with Kieran Tierney back at the club. Obviously not worked, and now they're going to have to. They'll be doing well to recruit somebody as capable as Greg Taylor has been, as an understudy to Kieran Tierney.
Mm-hmm. The Bucky Trucker says, well, started with Celtic and Greg Taylor, well done. Have I got the wrong show?
Yeah, but I managed to get a Rangers story and Dick Advocate and all that.
Managed to get Rangers in there. And we've
and I was perfectly well aware of that.
We've got a lot of people asking about Rangers transfer news as well, and we will come to that, I promise. But Scott, Greg Taylor, Celtic, I would say, maybe not nigh impossible to replace him, but it's going to be very tough.
Well, as for the reasons we've discussed before, in terms of Brendan Rodgers now has to find somebody who is willing to come in and battle with Kieran Tierney, and that might be a losing battle given Kieran Tierney's kind of stature at Celtic. And I suppose ultimately that's why Greg Taylor's moved on. I don't think he wanted to play second fiddle to Tierney, having done 5 years pretty much his first choice left back. I agree with you. I mean, I think he's done brilliant at Celtic. I actually think and I don't think I'm being unkind to him, but I think he's exceeded all expectations, Greg Taylor at Celtic. I think when he signed there for Kilmarnock, people looked at him as kind of young Scottish guy, going to the Old Firm, might be a kind of bit part player, might struggle with the level and the expectation, the intensity and stuff like that, but I think he's exceeded all of that, to get the trophies that he's won. And as Jacko says, to actually develop his game, he's a regular in the Scotland squad, there certainly was until recently, and to develop his game under Ange and then under Brendan Rodgers, to come in field and play and sit beside Callum McGregor in midfield and look comfortable. I think he's taken his game onto a level at Celtic that most people probably didn't think he could. So that's probably the biggest compliment I can pay him. And so he's went abroad, find a lot more kind of Scottish guys want to give it a try. Maybe it's not the most kind of glamorous league or glamorous club, but as Jacko says, a real passionate support, something totally different. Aye, and I read, I think Tam McManus, our columnist, tweeted today that I think he's just back for Thessalonica, just talking about how beautiful a place it is, how great a place it would be to live. And that's what you need to consider as well. He's got a young family, something totally different. You could argue he's probably achieved everything he was going to achieve at Celtic, so I don't think people could be too critical of him for moving on. And it's going to be interesting to see how he does over there.
A couple of people in the comments saying that Hayato Inamura will be Kieran Tierney's backup at left back. He can play left back.
He's flexible, and he can play at left centre half, or he can fill in at left back. Liam Scales can fill in at left back.
True.
So, but I don't know. Look,
you want someone more than a fill-in. You want a left back.
You want a specialised, you know, a guy that specialised in the position, I would have thought. Now, it'll be interesting to see, you know, the plans for where Brendan Rodgers sees Inamur playing. Is he coming in as the left-sided centre-half to match what we talked about and be as good as Cameron Carter-Vickers on the right-hand side? Or has he been brought in to play in between the positions and be flexible? And I don't know, but I get the feeling that unless he sees him as an out-and-out left-back, which I would doubt, I think Celtic will still be in the market for a left-back.
Mark, just to sum up on, Greg Taylor says it wasn't for Robertson and KT, he would be doing a 50 cap man, which I completely agree with.
I can't disagree. And also, I remember speaking to Greg Taylor. I was down at Lennoxtown, and it was just after Ange Postecoglou had left and Brendan Rodgers was coming back, and they were starting to get used to how Brendan Rodgers wanted him to play. And I said, look, is it a big difference? And we started having this conversation about what Ange Postecoglou had demanded of his fullbacks. And he was fairly certain that he would be able to get that sort of ability to roam, the same ability to come inside under Brendan Rodgers. And we just ended up having a chat about it. And I said to him, but did you used to be a midfield player? Because you look that comfortable when you're inside the pitch. And he spent, obviously I didn't realise this, but when he was coming up through, developing through the ages, predominantly he was a midfielder who then gets shifted out to left back. And I felt you could see that because he was so comfortable in possession and he had that ability to spot the pass, to get through lines and all that sort of stuff. Really comfortable player. I thought the one thing that he had probably going against him was his physical attributes. Quite a small guy. That's not always ideal, especially if you've got somebody on playing on your side that's got an aerial threat. And so defensively, you might have thought he would have struggled more than he did, but I think credit to him, it was never really
noticed
a weakness. It was never really anything that anybody exploited or played upon. I just think Greg Taylor all round was a really good Celtic player, and as I said, they'll do well to get somebody of a similar level in this window.
Aye, good luck to him as well in Greece. I'm sure it'll go well. Before we move on from Celtic,
also a massive character in that dressing room, Scott. You know, from everybody you talk to, he was part of the leadership group in there and a really valued part of it. He was a guy that so many of the new guys coming into the club looked to, you know, to lead them, inspire them, to learn the lessons of, you know, the Celtic culture. Greg Taylor was a real prominent part of that, and that's another miss, what he offers, you know, off the park and inside that dressing room and in the training ground.
Aye. Before we move on from Celtic, your column for Record Sport Online today has been about Celtic and the transfer window.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
I'm just making the point, and we kind of touched on it in last night's show, Daniel, that it feels almost as if Celtic are getting the retaliation in first here. You know, I said on the show last night, there's a clear determination here not to be caught letting the grass grow beneath their feet. I think that Celtic realise that this is a different proposition that they're about to get from the new look Rangers, the US-led Rangers, and with the level of people that are now in charge of planning and plotting for how Rangers go about putting up a proper challenge. I did say, and I would double down on it, that if I'm Celtic, I would probably calculate right now that Rangers have got a real shift on their hands. If Andrew Kavanagh and the 49ers and Russell Martin are in order to make Rangers genuinely competitive in time for the start of next season, I think it's almost already too big of an ask. There's a lot going on and we'll come round to it because things are starting to move, but it's a big, big ask. So Celtic could possibly have looked at that and thought, do you know what? I think we'll be okay for this season. But in fact, what they've done is 4 new signings already. When was the last time that Celtic went into July with 4 new signings in the bag? And a 5th one making his way over from the Far East. 5 signings in the building in the first week of July. That's not really the way that Celtic have done their business over recent seasons. And I fully expect that later on in the window there could be more marquee signings.
Because, sorry, to play devil's advocate, Celtic fans might say, okay, but third choice goalie.
Kieran Tierney.
Of course, aye. But third choice goalie, Callum Osmond, he's not played a first team game for anyone.
Swedish international.
That's true. No, listen, you're right in what you say. I'm just saying that a Celtic fan might go, listen, where are the big name signings?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think Celtic are tooling up. I think that, it could be easier for them just to think we don't need to, really go too far. Because I think the Celtic board has been accused over the years, Daniel. This was the point of the column, of having a strategy which was just stay a couple of steps ahead of Rangers. That's all you need to do.
Do just enough.
You win the league. You'll get access to the potential unlocking UEFA's millions and Champions League or Europa League, whatever it is. But if you just stay enough in front, and do you know what? Even if that was the case, it's not a bad strategy.
Aye.
Because it's allowed Celtic to stockpile trophies, 13 titles at the last 14, a total monopoly on the silverware domestically, and it has allowed them to try and grow in Europe a little bit. Could they have shown more ambition to do that? Yep. Have they shown a bit more ambition over the last couple of seasons? Yes, I think they have, under Brendan Rodgers.
Definitely, aye.
But all that aside, it's not a bad strategy. In order because what you got to do, empty the bank to try and win the Champions League, because that's never going to happen.
You spend 200 million and get nowhere near it.
You could spend 200 million in one transfer window and you'll still be nowhere near competitive at that level. So it makes sense. I can understand the fans want a little bit more ambition. I think the signs are this summer that Celtic have identified that the threat level was raised or has risen across the city, is likely to rise, even if not immediately. And so they've responded to it. And I expect there will be some heavy spending as this transfer window moves on. Bear in mind, Celtic only need to make tweaks to their starting 11. Rangers need an entire squad rebuild. And as we stand right now, Celtic have brought more new recruits in than Rangers have, even though Rangers are the ones who are really up against it in terms of trying to turn it around. Rangers have also got Champions League qualifiers just 3 weeks away. So I think that you're seeing a level of activity at Celtic which underlines their ambitions to make sure that, once again, they do stay at least 2 steps ahead of Rangers.
Comments coming in. If you want to get involved, please do. Oh, you go. Sorry, Scott, but I was actually going to just say to you, Curry says, why is Scotty never in the studio? Is he still under house arrest? Should you clear up those allegations?
I'm too busy. I'm chained to this chair. Try to write stories. Can't I get out of the house? Somebody come and rescue me. Get me into the studio. No, I was just going to say, Jackal, following on from what you're saying, and I agree with you about Celtic almost getting a retaliation in early, but we know Brendan Rodgers, he will be relishing trying to see off another Rangers manager.
Of course he will, Scott.
That's just the way he is. And people always bring up it was the question I asked him after an Old Firm game. I think it must have been Philippe Clement's first Old Firm game, and Rangers Celtic beat Rangers at Parkhead, and I think Clement's first Old Firm. And I think I asked him something like along the lines of, all the talk getting into this game is about a Rangers resurgence. Does it feel quite satisfying to kind of put a marker down again? And that's when he's famous kind of, no rant, but his kind of famous speech almost about, that's 5 Rangers man, or this is the 5th Rangers manager to come, to come after us. It's always Rangers are coming. So he relishes that challenge of seeing these guys off. And the other thing is, as we've said, this could be Rodgers' last season at Parkhead. Get into his final year. There's certainly no indications as yet that he's going to extend. So this could be it. This could be the 3 years. And the last thing he'll want, if it is his final season, is to get done over by Russell Martin and a new look Rangers.
Sorry, Keith, go on.
I was going to say we're having some technical difficulties there. I don't think Daniel could hear you, Scott. Has that been corrected?
Not yet, no.
All right, okay.
But I'm sure it made perfect sense, as it usually does. But I wanted to ask you both, John in the comment section saying, surely Brendan want to sign more £10 million plus players and not just projects and hopefuls. And if it is going to be his final season, I'm sure he'll want to do that. He'll want to give himself the best chance of winning everything again.
Well, I think so, but seeing as how you're having difficulties with your earphones and all that, Scott, what's your thoughts on that? I've suggested already that I can see Celtic spending, a sizable sum of money on at least one real sort of I don't know how you would call it, a marquee, a top level, something that's really going to excite the fans. And I keep coming back to it. I think it's going to be a striker. Are you anticipating like this is an early kind of flurry of guys that Celtic would have been looking at for some period of time, getting their ducks in a row on these positions, and then I think they play the market a little bit and see where they're at as the summer develops?
No, I think you're right. I expect one big one. I think one big one, Jacko, for Celtic. In terms of big money, you into the Ida price tag or the Arne Engels price tag. I think there could be one of them later in the window. Maybe no more than that, but certainly one big one. And I think that will be to do with what we're talking about. I think Celtic and Brendan Rodgers realise, and there's no guarantee of this, by the way, because you say the work that's to get done at Rangers is unbelievable, but they probably sense that things are a wee bit different at Ibrox. There will be a bit more money to spend. It'll certainly be a different style of play. It'll be a different looking Rangers team. So there just might be that bit more of a threat, as you said. And as I say, no, I think you're right. That's why they've got in early. They've tidied up the wee bits of stuff at the third choice goalkeeper, young boy Osman coming in, who we think might kind of take the place of Johnny Kenny, for instance. They've ticked those boxes. Tierney, obviously, we knew about. Negren's probably the one. It was only $1.5 million, but that was a really clever signing. With 6 months left, they almost kind of stole a march on other clubs. A Swedish international, fits the profile. I think he'll be a really good addition for them. So, no, I think they've been pretty smart early doors, and I think it's because they know that there might be a challenge coming. And as I just said a minute ago, if this is Brendan Rodgers' last season, he will want to go on the ultimate high, going and winning every trophy, and certainly doing as well as they did in Europe last season, or maybe even better.
And potentially taking the scalp of another Rangers manager.
Exactly. Aye. I genuinely think he relishes that. As I say, whenever he's questioned on it.
He does, Scott, you're absolutely right.
He loves it, doesn't he? Aye.
He loves it. He loves it. And by the way, I don't doubt, I think he'll have a lot of respect for Russell Martin already, although Russell Martin's relatively inexperienced manager. He's only been at a couple of clubs. But I think he'll respect the way Russell Martin's trying to go about it and trying to play the game. I think he'll enjoy that joust. If the two teams get up against each other, it's going to be fairly similar kind of styles. But ultimately, Rodgers is ruthless. I mean, he'll want to see him off. The same way Clermont, as I say, that first Old Firm game, all the talk was about Rangers getting into it. Rangers are stronger. This could be the season. Bang. I think Celtic won 2-0 that day. Kind of put them in their place. And Rodgers just loved it. Just kind of stamping his authority on that fixture and kind of letting everybody know who was the top dog. And Celtic will try and do that early again this season, especially at the start of the campaign, because as we've talked about, there's going to be teething problems at Rangers. There has to be, with the amount of new players coming in, trying to adapt to a new style under a new manager. And I think the worry for Rangers is that's when Celtic could really take advantage. And once again, I mean, you sound like seem to say the same thing every season, but Celtic could steal a march early on Rangers and get ahead. And once they do get ahead, it's difficult to catch them.
We started with Celtic, guys, because we've been getting stick for starting with Rangers.
I'm not sure we should have let that out the bag.
I know,
that we've
actually.
been dictated to by a couple of...
Well, we aim to keep people happy. Do you know what I mean? We're here for the fans. But Dale now saying no Rangers content. So there you go. Can he win? Shall we move on to Rangers then, because it's been quite a busy day?
It seems like a natural progression of the conversation, as Scott's just saying there. There is movement now starting to happen. I've just said there that Celtic have got 4 in, about to make it 5. But it looks as if over the course, Scott, the next, 24, 48 hours, there could be at least 2 new arrivals at Ibrox.
Looks like it, Jacko. I mean, Joe Rothwell looks almost certain to be done in the next 24 hours, and I would fully expect I think Connor Cody will probably follow him the next 2 or 3 days. So certainly before the end of the weekend, or before we get to the weekend, when obviously they play their first friendly against Bruges on Sunday, I would think, it's never any guarantee, but I would think those two will be over the line. And I think you're right. It now seems like it's moving a wee bit quicker. Getting Aarons, Rothwell, Cody is a decent start. It's taking a bit of time, and they need a lot more to come in and plenty more to go out the other way as well. Obviously, we know about Dessers, interest in Dessers and Igamane, for instance. But no, I think the next few days Rangers will have 2 or 3 in, and obviously Rothwell's the one that's emerged today, and I think he'll be a really good signing for them.
Interesting, and it came from relatively nowhere. I mean, it's our job to try and scrabble about and get early indicators of who might be going where. Yep. But I've noticed that it's part of the sort of MO at Leeds that a lot of the time Leeds will make signings, and there's not a great deal of build up to it or lead up to it. They just produce the signings. Mm-hmm. Rothwell has literally come about in the last 24 hours, and it looks as if it's very far down the path towards completion already.
And it's a permanent deal, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not a loan.
Yeah. No, that one's permanent. Cody, I think, it is permanent. It's a long-term contract actually for Cody, and I think Scott Burns has written the story just an hour or so before we come into the studio, an exclusive story that that Leicester are expected to let him travel north within at some point in the next 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So that one does look as if it's been expedited, and it has to be. As I said, I'm surprised that he went to rejoin Leicester training. I thought Rangers would have got ahead of that one, because I think that Russell Martin will see Cody as being a real cornerstone of his team, and a defensive sort of linchpin, and also a standard setter for what he looks. And the other interesting thing, Scott, I want to ask you about this is I think we're already starting to see a pattern emerging in terms of the profile of the sort of players that Rangers are looking at. It seems to be, certainly the early indications would suggest they want a real British core to their side, and that is a big change of direction. It's a big pivot from where they've been over the last wee while, where they've recruited from all corners, haven't they? And they've got a dressing room of real mixed nationalities, but have perhaps been guilty of getting away from that British core element. And certainly the kind of, we've been talking about it, that towards the end of last season it was Barry Ferguson and his staff were the only guys there that really had that identity and understood what was required at a club like Rangers. Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of guys coming in from abroad who perhaps don't get it. You would think that a British core would be far easier to sort of assimilate. Mm-hmm.
It has to be a blend, Jacko. That's the thing, doesn't it? I mean, it always seems to be either one or the other with Rangers. It felt last season be going and getting your Diomandes and Jeffties and Igamane. It felt like it was all projects that were coming in. Young guys mm-hmm. with potential. And look, of course, if Igamane goes for between 10 and 15 million quid, that's the dream scenario for them. That's the whole point in it. But as you say, there has to be a balance. That doesn't win you titles. Just having a raft of players like that, you need the balance. You need the experience. You need the Codys. Rothwell coming in at 30, bags of experience, adds experience to midfield, something a bit different that they've no got. Also, you're talking about a theme. I think already we're seeing a theme. These are all players that Russell Martin knows.
Yep, correct.
He's either worked with them, played against, managed against them, or he's tried to sign them previously. So, I mean, I don't think we've really seen a Kevin Thelwell signing yet as such. These seem to be guys who Russell Martin said, these are the real pillars that I want to come in. These are the guys that I know, and I would really like to get in quick because I think they can do a job. And then you might see what the recruitment department and Thelwell's come up with round about that. But you're right. I mean, getting Aarons and Cody in to the back line and then getting a 30-year-old central midfielder in it's certainly starting to take a wee bit of shape. I think you're right. There is a theme there. British players, specific type of characters, and also guys that Russell Martin knows.
And what about Igamane, Scott? What are you hearing the latest on that? Because there seems to be suggestions, certainly that I was hearing, that he might not even have to come back into Glasgow. He might just make his way straight to France. I think he was given an extended break, wasn't he? I think it's really close now to just turning up there and having his medical and completing this deal.
It seems to be, I think, the last couple of hours, Jacko, it's been reported certainly in, if not France, but Morocco, that Igamane might be in France already, ready for a medical and stuff.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Look, if that's the case, so be it. Rangers, rightly or wrongly, are playing their cards very close to their chest with us. I mean, the last kind of unofficial correspondence for Rangers with us was that no official bid had come in yet, or certainly no acceptable bid had come in for Igamane. Look,
was that this afternoon, Scott?
No, that would have been like yesterday. So I mean, it could have moved on from there. And obviously, we know these things can move very quickly. But no, I'd be amazed if there's so much reporting, Jacko, between France and Morocco that this has to be a goer, surely. I mean, you can partly understand Rangers maybe know what to jeopardise such a big move, especially when it's a huge, or it might be a huge fee coming in. But they're very tight-lipped at the minute. But if you believe the reports from abroad, it seems to be that this is well down the line already.
Are you anticipating a certain price, Scott?
I was going to ask that.
Look, this is just my personal opinion. I'd be surprised if Rangers get the 15 million euros that's been talked about. I think if they get that, it'd be an unbelievable deal for a guy that they paid 1.5 for. And I think we've raved about Igamane, Jacko, at certain points last season. The goal against Spurs, the hat trick at Easter Road and stuff like that, the winner against Celtic, but it was all a bit sporadic. I still felt as if he had, he wasn't quite at the level required. So I think if they get that kind of money, they'd be doing amazingly well. My gut would say, no, it might be a bit less than that. I think you could be talking about 10, maybe even just under that. But that's only my opinion. There's obviously add-ons on top of that, and there might be a sell-on clause as well, for the Moroccan club. So the details are a bit sketchy.
Which could be as high as 30%.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big chunk.
Well, if you were to sell for, put it this way, if you sell for 15 million, and as I keep saying, Dan, it's on the profit you made.
Profit, say.
So you're still looking at about, if it was 15 million, it'd be 4 million, which still means that you're up over the 10 mark. If that's the figures that you're looking at. And by the way, if Rangers do complete this deal and he does go to Lille, I would imagine that part of that is Rangers inserting a pretty hefty sell on. So that, they'll hope that sometime in the future,
the next big move,
they get another hit out of it.
See, by the way, just on Scott saying there about the price, see if Rangers get at 15 million euros or even a bit less, 10 million, I think that's absolutely incredible.
If they can clear 10 million euros of profit on a player that,
unbelievable,
that is still raw, he's
and
still
not only
really
that, remember, he didn't get a game for the first few months. He was sitting in the stands.
Listen, there is no doubt when you look at Igamane, has the boy got natural ability? He's got bundles of natural ability. He's a talented boy. He's a player that excites the fans because he doesn't know what he's got to do next, so how could they? Really gifted technical football player in terms of his ability on the ball. Is he easy to coach? I'm not sure that he is.
Interesting.
I think, and he's a free spirit. Does he fit into a system? It depends how disciplined you're looking for that system to be. If you are really disciplined and you're looking for trigger points in terms of press and defence, is Igamane the guy for that? Well, I think, Barry Ferguson had problems trying to fit him into the Rangers attack towards the end of last season. I think it was largely to do that. I don't know how easy it is or I don't know how easy it is to get instructions into him and into his head, because I think the boy just wants to go and be a bit of a maverick and play the game the way that he wants to play it. And he's really good at that.
Aye.
But that potentially, is that a question mark in terms of how far he can go in the game? I think it is, because you need to be able to take on instructions.
Aye. A couple of people asking there. Darren was just asking Keith about Dessers. Any news on that? Have we heard anything?
Scott, I'll pass that over you. As far as I can see, I've been waiting, because there was this suggestion that Feyenoord might try and break the deadlock on this that is kind of generated between Rangers and AEK Athens. But I've seen no sign of Feyenoord making anything official on that, or making a move of any kind.
Before you come in, Scott, sorry, we're getting a lot of comments saying the 30%'s not true. The 30% selling. They're asking you, 30%'s not true, it's a lot of rubbish. So 30% isn't true, so I thought I'd just give you the chance to say.
Well, I haven't actually seen the contract, but obviously these guys.
You weren't there when it was signed, aye. Sorry, Scott, Dessers, aye.
Just on Dessers, the last I've heard on it, and I believe it to be true, is obviously the clubs are talking, and from what I hear, there seems to be there's a gap in terms of what AEK want to pay and what Rangers value Dessers. I think that gap's maybe around like a million euros. Some people might think that's a lot. Some people might think maybe it isn't. There should be some kind of compromise. But Rangers have obviously, if they're going to sell Dessers, they've got a price in their head for what they want from him. No matter what you think of Dessers, they still scored 51 goals in 2 seasons. And Rangers have got a European qualifier in 3 weeks' time. Now, talking about Igamane leaving, can you lose Igamane and Dessers before that game without bringing them in? I don't think you could. That would be nigh impossible to get into the Panathinaikos game with what Danilo as your only striker or your main striker. So I suppose it's pretty delicate for Rangers. They're obviously trying to, they're open to guys like that going out if there's decent money coming in, but they have to have guys lined up. They've obviously been linked to Turgeman and from Israel, and Freegan, the Croatian striker. It looks as if those two are on a potential list of targets, but I suppose it's a balancing act for them just now, Kevin Thelwell, in terms of they want to do business in and out, but they need to make sure they've got a competitive squad ready to get into this Panathinaikos game with everything that's at stake.
Well, when you think about it, the amount of goals that Dessers, Igamane and Czerny contributed last season.
Almost all of the goals, it feels
Almost all of the goals. So, this is going to be probably the key part. We're talking about the guys that Rangers have got lined up, and they look like solid structural sort of foundation signings. But they're going to have to really look at what they're doing in the forward areas. If they sell both their first choice strikers from last season, they're going to need to bring at least 2 in. And I still would imagine they have to be looking at somebody in a creative role to, substitute what Czerny was offering last season, which was a lot.
They need 2 wide players, Jacko, wouldn't they? I mean, it has to be.
Yeah, they've lost Hadji, who was one of the sort of creative players. So yeah, you'd be looking at probably 2 wingers, 2 strikers. Now, have they got these players lined up? Are they just waiting to seal the deal on the sale of Dessers and Igamane, and then they've got the money and they can make their moves? Well, that'd be really interesting, because see, if that's the case, I would have to doff my hat to Kevin Thelwell and to the guys in his recruitment department, because that's probably how a big club and how Rangers haven't been operating and how they should be operating. If they can make some money selling these players, getting the price that they've set out to achieve, get that money and then immediately move it because they've got guys that are in the pipeline, then that would be fairly impressive. And you can only imagine that if they're even contemplating the sales of Igamane and Dessers, then they must be quite far down that line, because as Scott has pointed out, it's 3 weeks to Panathinaikos. So you would risk a real hot reception from your new support if you went into a tie like that with Danilo as your only attacking option and no wide players, no creative players. So I can see that it almost looks like building from the back, but I think that means there's about to be a real flurry of activity in the more forward areas. And to be fair, Scott, those are probably the signings and the comings and goings that will most excite the supporters.
100%. I totally agree that they're going to need, if Dessers and Igamane goes, they'll need 2 strikers and 2 wingers. I mean, the wide players are so crucial in this Russell Martin system. You know, if you look at Southampton and Swansea and that, and at the moment, who have Rangers got? Oscar Cortez and Ross McCausland is our 2 wingers. Bayrami can play there. Who knows what his future is at Ibrox either. So they're not well off in that department at the moment. So they'll definitely need 2 wingers and 2 strikers, and that's not on top of Aarons, Cody, Rothwell, maybe a couple others, as well as getting guys out, all the guys that we've spoke about, like your Ben Davies, your Proppers, Yilmaz, if they're looking at, we believe they're looking at Owen Beck as well, if they can get Yilmaz out the door. So there's still a lot of work to get done in the next 3 weeks.
Tell me this, Scott, sorry for jumping in again, David, but
No.
From what you've seen of the way that Russell Martin sets his team out, Scott, do you anticipate the need for wingers to play wide in a Russell Martin team? Or, and I hesitate to mention this, but the Michael Beale sort of inverted wingers that played as 2 number 10s.
I think they'll play wide, Jacko. I think they'll play wide.
So wingers with paint on their boots, basically.
I think so. I mean, I might be wrong, but because Russell Martin's got principles in terms of how he wants the game to play, but no, he isn't scared of changing formation. I mean, he tried just about every formation last year at Southampton. He said that himself to try and get a win in the Premier League, so he can change it. But I think his go-to formation is the kind of 4 sitting midfielder, 2 number 8s, and then 2 wingers and a striker. I mean, I think I'm right in saying, the year they got up with Southampton, I mean, Ryan Fraser was a key player for him at Southampton, who just hugged the touchline. So, I think he'll want 2 wide men, especially in a Rangers team, you remember, that's going to dominate most games, and they're going to go at teams most weeks, certainly domestically. I think width will be really important in his team, and that's why, as I say, I mean, it looks as if young McCausland is probably going to be moved on. There was talk earlier in the window about clubs maybe coming in for him, either on loan or a permanent. It's difficult to see him starting in a Russell Martin team. With all due respect to the boy, Cortez, who knows what you're going to get. I'm probably in the minority. I think there might be a player in Cortez, and I think Russell Martin might be able to get a tune out of him. With a full pre-season in him. Will he be first choice? Maybe not, but I think he'll definitely be around, and Martin will definitely try and work with him. But even on top of that, I still think he's going to need two wide players, especially with Cherny. As you say, with Cherny going, Hadji going, I think they really need to strengthen in that area.
Before we finish, we need to talk about Lawrence Shankland again, Keith, because I know we've talked about it a couple of times this week, but Derek McInnes has come out today, new quotes on Shankland saying that whilst it's not a no from the Shankland camp, he's not going to give up hope of extending his Hearts deal. But as we sit here right now, still an impasse.
Well, Scott had floated the idea the other night that Rangers should make an offer for him, and I speculated last night. I wonder, because it feels to me as if there's a blockage on this deal. It feels to me as if Lawrence Shankland wants to commit to Hearts. I certainly know that Derek McInnes would like that to happen. And for some reason, and that's what I said, is there something we're not quite seeing? And so I wondered last night if maybe Scott was onto something and Rangers had come to the table and there was something. My information is that that's not the case. Rangers are not interested and are not, putting anything down in front of Lawrence Shankland. So there's another thing that's removed from it, and it just makes it more difficult to understand why there is an impasse. And I think that, obviously Derek McInnes, he's made it clear now. He couldn't make it any more clear. He's prepared to wait as well. Whatever this is, whatever the issue is, But it will be frustrating because I think that, from everyone I'm hearing, I think that Lawrence Shankland would like to be in Spain just now with the Hearts players preparing for the new season, and I know that Derek McInnes would like to be would like for him to be there. So it's strange.
Well, look, Ross says in the comments, if Shankland wanted to beat Hearts, he'd be signing the dotted line by now. He clearly wants away to another club. But I would counter that by saying there seems to be a suggestion on social media, and Mark raises it here in the comment section, that maybe it's a problem with Shankland, his agent, his representatives. But, so you're saying that your understanding is Shankland does want to stay at Hearts?
I think that's the perceived wisdom.
Yeah.
As I said, I keep saying it. I find it hard to understand why this, is proving an awkward one to get over the line because, and I'll say it again, Lawrence Shankland has had a really happy marriage with Hearts. With Derek McInnes there, it becomes a marriage made in heaven potentially. As Scott had previously said, the amount of chances that you would expect Lawrence Shankland to get in a Derek McInnes side, which is set up to get balls into the box and all that. So, look, obviously Derek McInnes hasn't given up hope, and so I would suggest that as long as Derek McInnes hasn't given up hope, the Hearts fans should maintain a similar position and just wait to see how this plays out. But something feels strange. It's hard for me to understand.
Scott, what's your gut feeling? Do you think McInnes? Do you think Shankland will remain a Hearts player?
Nah, I don't think so. No, Daniel.
I think that ship sailed, Scott.
I think so, but I probably thought a couple of days ago that Derek McInnes and Hearts were kind of going to give up on it and move on. But obviously, the quotes for Derek today that have come out saying he's not giving up hope, gives it a wee bit of light again. And I suppose, for the other side, you would think, well, if he's not going to sign with Hearts, why is he not just went and signed with another club? If he's got these offers on the table, and Hearts isn't suitable, or the money and offers right, and you can get better elsewhere, then go. A bit like you, Jack. I don't understand why there's this.
Well, I can get something better elsewhere.
I thought Scott was saying that you've got offers on the table. Do you want to tell us about that? Or?
He's always got offers on the table.
I was going to say that. I know he's always got fingers in many pies.
So I don't know where the blockage comes from. I mean, I suppose the fact that he's no went and signed for another club might suggest that as Jacko says, maybe he does want to be at Hearts. It just has to be the right conditions, the right money, whatever it is. But the longer it goes without them sorting that out, I just think it becomes more difficult for them to sign for Hearts. And I think my gut probably is he'll be elsewhere for the start of the new season.
What about you, Keith? Your gut? What do you think?
If
you had to guess.
Well, as I've just said to the Hearts fans, if Derek McInnes hasn't given up hope, then nor should they. And it would make me believe that Derek McInnes still thinks this deal can be done.
Aye, I think that's a fair summation. And I think that's a good note for us to finish on, guys. It's been a jam-packed edition of the Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you so much for all your comments. We really appreciate it as ever. If you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do so at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We'll be back. I thought you were going to say something there.
As if you're ready to go into some sort of team.
It's going to do Al Pacino on any given Sunday. Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
Have a good night.
Cheers, Scotty.
And have a good night, everyone watching. Hope you can join us tomorrow. Cheers.